One of the really cool things about this restomod is that you will have access to all of the software for free that we use to write the software for this machine. And you're getting another PLC, which is already pre-programmed and ready to roll, so that if something were to ever happen to the one that's in there, you can literally just replace it with this one, take that one out, put this one in. So this will go inside of the shipping container with the rest of the spare parts with this machine. So we won't go into any of the software now because hopefully you won't need it, but you could always make changes to it down the road, or you can ask me to make changes to it down the road. I can remote into the machine. So we'll go ahead and start it. And when you power it up, you'll get a series of lights. And as long as you get any lights, it means that everything is fine. The PLC woke up and you're ready to roll. So I won't turn on the capping station right now because none of its function has changed from the way that it used to be previously. The only changes I'm going to focus on have to do with the labeling station, because there's some knobs that you didn't have before. First and foremost, when you start a cycle, I'm going to leave these disabled. Let me take some of these bottles off. There are a couple of different error modes that the machine can have. So if you start a cycle, motors are running, everything is happening, and if you get a jam, I'll simulate a jam, you'll get a blinking red. Now the machine is locked out, you can't do anything. You'll have to reset it, which is to hold this for 2 seconds. It'll stop blinking and you're ready to roll again. So that covers a basic bottle jam. And then anytime you want to stop it, you just stop it. So that's all fine. So with the labeling head, when you enable it and start a cycle, one of the very, very first things it's going to do is every time you start it, it is going to advance from this, wherever it was, it's going to advance until it finds the web and then advance to the end of a label and measure it. So what that means is it's going to waste a label. So you can do this a couple of different ways. You can either just deal with it and just let it spit a label out, or you could elect to back it up one label. I'm going to wait until that little light goes sort of kind of red. There, right in the edge. And then when I start it, I won't waste the label, because the very, very first thing it will do, we don't have the light illuminated, is it will back up here so you can see. There, our light's illuminated, which meant that it found the edge and measured it, and we have a little bit of label, hard to see from here, a little bit of label sticking out. Yep, so we should be good to go. Now we'll go ahead and load the bottles up. Like I said, I've got the capping station off right now because that function hasn't changed any. Now we have two-sided enabled right now, so it will do both sides of the bottle, spit one label, then spit the next label. Now you'll notice that they get into the station pretty close together. You don't want two bottles ending up back to back because you won't have the ability to label them both. It might get a jam. So you'll have to play with the speed. If this happens, if this problem occurs where you get two bottles into the labeling station before one is exited, you can either slow the conveyor belt down, or you can play with those speeds and see if you can get it to a point where two bottles don't back up back to back. And on one-sided, that'll never be a problem because it's just going to get one label and then move on. So this is only going to be an issue in two-sided, which is probably where you're going to be using it most of the time anyway. So you could always slow the conveyor belt down, or, that would be one of the easiest things to change first. So the other knobs on here, if you do change the speed of the auger, changing the speed of the auger will also change the speed of this roller. And you will then need to increase or decrease the label applicator's speed, because that will change the speed of this roller. Ideally, you need them to mesh. You need the bottle to be rotating roughly at the same speed that a label is being advanced. And so if the applicator is going too fast, you'll get a wrinkle. It'll bunch up on itself. If it's going too slow, the webbing will go slack because it's pulling the webbing through the applicator. So you can, play with that. And then the top one, this adjusts the distance from the first label to the second label, the gap. You get the front label and the back label matching with each other. Obviously that doesn't matter when you're doing single-sided or one-sided, but the one thing I would say is there are a couple of safety features, not really safety features, but ways that you could have an error in the labeling station. So for example, I'm going to just remove a label here. And then we're going to try and label a couple of bottles. And I want you to see that there are some ways, just put one in here. This one probably won't trigger. Yep. Now this one should trigger an error. Yes. So you'll notice that we have a cycle stop and we have a blinking label ready light. What that meant was that there was an issue with our labeling head. And in this case, it meant that we were missing a label. But this system will also trigger if you have a tear in the webbing or the roll runs out or something like that. The machine will come to a stop. And so hopefully you'll never make more than one bad bottle before the system comes to a stop and you get a chance to figure out what happened. And so to correct this is a similar way to correcting the other error. You will hold cycle stop. The machine has now been reset. We'll have to remove this bottle. We can deal with that later. Now, the machine will remeasure a label when you start it up from a reset condition. So we're going to leave it right there. And we're going to hit cycle start. It's probably going to spit a label out. Yep, it did. Because it had to remeasure. Because usually an error can also happen if it got a bad measure on the first one, and then the width of the labels that it's now measuring are different than the ones that it measured earlier. So anytime the labeling head sees a problem, it will just turn itself off until you can correct whatever the issue was. But as it is, it says it's ready to go, and it'll just sit here and label all day long. Got a nice tight webbing, no slack. And so this should be a really, really nice system for keeping up with all the labeling and stopping if there's ever an issue. And we can always make adjustments to this down the road if we need to speed it up, slow it down, make the label error less sensitive. We can change it on the fly. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this thing off, put all the panels back on it, crate it up, and get it shipped out to you. Just give me a call when you get it, and we'll go over how to set it up with you, and you can get bottling.